Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Wonderful to have you here. We're going to be getting started in a few minutes. You can use this time while we're settling in to, settle in. We're going to be getting started at the top of the hour. Welcome in, everyone. We will be starting very shortly. You are in the right place if you're here for our special course on reinventing your localization career. And while we are waiting to get started, I'll actually jump to the first slide. You can use this opportunity, first of all, to double check that you can see the slide. It should say reinventing your localization career. And then you're welcome to share in the chat if you want to share your LinkedIn profile. It's always lovely to connect and be part of a community. And also, I would love to hear from some of you. What is a life or a professional change that you're proud of yourself for creating? We'll have some time to explore that. We're also going to be using some worksheets. You can find those either on the course site at the link listed here, or if you scan this QR code, it should open it as well. We'll share that link in the chat as well. If you paste that in your browser, you should be able to get those worksheets. Yes, please. Thank you for sharing, Bastian. Uh, Feel free to connect with one another. Relationships are an extremely important part of life, and we welcome you to connect with one another here. Thank you, Delicia. And feel free to also share. I know it takes a little bit of vulnerability, but would love to hear from some of you while we're waiting to get started. What is also a change that you're proud of yourself for creating or initiating? Welcome in, everyone. Glad to have you all with us. We're going to be getting started momentarily. Um, we are just settling in. You're welcome to share your LinkedIn, and I would especially love to hear from you a change that you're proud of yourself for creating, whether that's a life change, a professional change at this point in your life. Um, what is something that you're proud of? We're going to be getting started momentarily, and I want to make sure I will offer it again later. But for those of you who are arriving early or on time, use either the course website the link here or this QR code to access the worksheets that we're going to be using throughout today's course. Welcome, Michelle, Sarah. Welcome to all of you. Wonderful to have you here with us. All right, we do have 2 minutes past the hour. I want to be respectful of your time. We are going to get started. Um, I recommend, in addition to having these worksheets accessible to get a notebook or paper available. You should have access to the slides if you don't have it already. They'll be shared after the fact, but I'm also going to be giving some prompts alongside the worksheets that you may want to record your answers to. So let's get started. Welcome to our course, Reinventing Your Localization Career. I will start with a little introduction of myself. I suppose that some of you might be equally as qualified as me to teach this course, and you may have already reinvented your career and overcome adversity. While I do have, I think, a lot of lessons I can offer, I'm here today, not necessarily as an expert to tell you what to do, but as a facilitator to support you, to reflect, to imagine, and to start to generate action toward possible change. Uh, until last year, I worked the last 12 years in tech startups in the US and Germany. I had an engineering background, and that's merged with localization about 7 years ago when I hired Alfonso, and I was his manager in a company where we were working to figure out how to integrate localization into our business processes. So I learned a lot about, we were shamefully using just Google spreadsheets, and we built a TMS and a TM and so many other best practices that we were too naive to know of at the time. I was initially managing customer support and technical writing teams, and I continue to be really humbled by people who work in many different languages. I'm an advocate for lifelong learning, and in the last years, I transitioned my own career to being a self-employed coach and teamwork facilitator, which is what brings me to offering this course with TranslaStars today. Uh, and it's also International Coaching Week, so that's something really exciting that I'm celebrating with my colleagues this week, and a really opportune time for me to offer this course to you. Um, so really for professionals, if you might feel stuck treading water, you're driven to move forward. My coaching is a way of supporting people to gain confidence and clarity and calm. And I also support teams and business leaders to manage change and build workplaces where people thrive. So we decided to partner with TranslaStars to create this course. It's going to be two-hour sessions to support you in finding what change do you want to embrace. I've personally seen the value in defining and embracing change, and I hope you will too. I know we've had a few more people join us, and we're glad to have you with us. Uh, you're welcome to use the chat, as I see some of you have. Um, if you're not able to stay for all of the presentation, you'll also receive access to the recordings. Um, we're here today to talk about reinventing yourself and your career in a crisis. You may or may not feel like you're experiencing a crisis at the moment, but a lot of us have fortunately lived through many transformations, and particularly in the last years. Social experts sometimes describe the state of the world today as a polycrisis, which is the simultaneous occurrence of many different challenges that strain people and societies. So we created this course for translation professionals to benefit from reflective exercises and tools that can support you to be resilient in times of need. I want to set some kind of foundation before we really dive in. Part one, where we are today, is going to focus primarily on your identity and the need for change. So we will explore who you are, what you value, what you can gain from change, and how you might imagine yourself evolving. Part two, and then for those of you who are here live tomorrow, if not, whenever you want to watch it, that will focus on actioning and leaning into the change. And we're going to explore tools and resources that support you to manage stress, experiment, and choose new challenges. There's a lot of interactive exercises built in, and I really want to encourage you're going to get them out of this primarily what you put into it. Um, those of you who are here live will have time to reflect and share. Uh, if you have questions for me along the way, I'm hoping you'll be able to use the Q&A. I'm not seeing it here immediately. I want to try to use the chat to discuss with one another. And if you can find the Q&A, then go ahead and drop your questions for me there. And those of you who are watching the recording can follow along with the worksheets and pause if you need additional time to work on your own. I'm not going to be able to review everyone's input individually, but you can reach out to me after the course if you have questions or feedback. You're also welcome already if you have questions about the format, topics, or me personally, as we're moving into the agenda, to ask those. I want to also share some basic guidelines to help create a shared space of learning. Number one, you've shown up, you're here, you're present, and think about what can support you to stay present. Is there anything that you need to manage in your environment that's going to support you to be here? I mentioned the Q&A and the chat. We'll also have a break about halfway, so you can use that also to refresh, reset yourself to stay present. And I want to encourage participation as well. Make this a space of maybe playfulness, willingness to explore. If folks do bring personal stories, I'm not necessarily expecting that, but let's just agree that we respect that and we don't take it out of this space as gossip. Of course, I want you to learn things and take those away. That's my highest hope. But just with the personal stuff, let's be respectful of what people share. And hopefully, you've also brought a mindset of openness to learning. Um, we're going to have fun. We're here to work alongside one another, curious. I really also like to encourage emphasizing different over right and wrong. All right, we're going to move into our part one agenda. The theme for today is understanding where you are, who you are, and how to move forward. We're going to talk about identity in career, drafting your career story, and we're going to start to determine the change that moves you in a direction that's desirable to you. I talked about the Q&A and the chat. Before we dive in, I want to ask you a really big question. And I just want to take a deep breath. So take a moment to ground yourself. Take a long, deep inhale and let the breath out of your mouth. And now, like I said, I have a big question for you. What is a word or a phrase on your mind when you're thinking about change in your career? You can scan this to participate. You can go to menti.com and type in this code and share with the rest of us what is a word or a phrase on your mind when you're thinking about change in your career. So you can again scan this code. We'll go to menti.com and put in the code here. I'm waiting for your results. We have scary, exciting, fear, new and better opportunities. Think about for you personally, more excitement, diversify, self-development, being alone, adapting, change, enjoy, missing the past, some nostalgia, being alone again. The words are moving around. Evolution, I see, appeared here. New life. Yeah, there's definitely a connection between career and life. All right. Let's give another moment to make sure everyone has had a chance to participate. Renewal, marketing work. We're seeing fear at the center. That might mean that few more people have mentioned fear. We also have scary, excitement, adapt, improve, evolve. So many beautiful words here. And I think that we are in the right headspace for what we came here to talk about. And now I need to switch back to the other window. I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment. Give me just a second because I'm struggling to close this. All right, give me just a moment. We're going to start. I want to really manage your expectations. Of course, this is about career, and we've advertised this about reinventing your localization career, and that is where we're going to focus. But of course, I think it's important that we're paying attention to terminology. Um, Apologies, folks. This window is full screen, and I cannot get it to close. Ah, here we go. Coming back. All right. Thank you for your patience. And all right. So, I want to clarify some terminology here. Um, we're going to have the author Elizabeth Gilbert. She's speaking really to artists about distinguishing their career. Professional facets along their journey. It's about a 9-minute video, and then we're going to summarize it briefly. But I'm sharing this, even though it's 9 minutes, because I think she makes a very clear and important distinction that's going to help us to frame um, some decisions and the rest of the course. So I'm going to start playing that video. You should be able to get the sound as well. Feel free to drop a message in the chat if for some reason it's not coming through. All right, I'm going to start
Ready?
that now.
Stay with me on this. 1, hobby. 2, job. 3, career. 4, vocation. Write these words down. Ready? Hobby, job, career, vocation. These are 4 different words because they're 4 different things. All right? They totally mean different things. And I'm going to just give you a little overview, and I hope that this will help you to maybe find a way that you can be in the world and be happier. First, a hobby. A hobby is something that you do purely for pleasure. A hobby is something that you do to prove that you're not just an automaton robot working in the machine, you know, producing, consuming, and as I always say, paying bills and waiting to die. Here's the wonderful thing about a hobby. The stakes are zero. The stakes are nothing. The stakes don't matter at all. You don't have to make money from your hobby. You don't have to get famous from your hobby. Nobody has to know anything about your hobby. Your hobby just brings you pleasure and makes you feel like you're more than just a cog in the machine. So here's something you could do. You could start doing art and creativity as a hobby, right? For all of time, people have had hobbies and enjoyed hobbies. You can do that. You can do that anytime. That's on your own time. No one needs to see it. Just do it because it's fun, do it because it's enjoyable. That's great. You do not have to have a hobby. It is not required, but it's a nice thing to have. It makes you feel like your life is just not about the grind, right? So think about that. Number 2, job. Here's what you do have to have. You have to have a job. Out of that list, hobby, job, career, vocation, the only thing that you actually do have to have is a job. You have to pay the bills. We live in a material world. Like, you know how many jobs I've had in my life, even as I was making art? All through my 20s, I usually had 3 jobs at a time, 2 to 3 day jobs at a time. And I never resented it because I understand the contract. The contract is there's material world and then there's like spiritual artistic world. They don't always intersect. That's fine. I loved having a job. I never resented having a job because having a job was the way that I kept the contract of taking care of myself as a mature adult in the world, being reasonable, being rational, being able to pay my bills, being able to not be a burden on other people, not waiting for someone to come along and save me, not waiting for a sugar daddy, not waiting for an art patron, not waiting for somebody to give me a grant, not waiting for somebody to publish anything that I was doing, right? Like just taking care of myself, providing for myself. And guess who else has had a job? Almost every artist who has ever lived has had a job. Most of the things of beauty and value that were made in this world were made by people who were not landed gentry, right? Who were people who had to get by other ways. They were farmers, they were businessmen, they were Melville, when he was writing Moby Dick, was working in the customs office. He had a job his whole entire life. He was never able to just be a novelist. Hardly anybody is ever able to just be a novelist, to just be an actor, to just be a poet, to just be a musician. Precious few people ever get to do that. But if you love it, you can do it on the side, right? But yeah, you need a job. And here's the great thing about a job. It doesn't have to be awesome. It doesn't have to fulfill you. It doesn't have to be joyful. It just has to pay. That's it. Like, I've had so many jobs that I didn't love. I've had so many jobs that I didn't like. Whatever. You go and do it. You give them the thing that you're giving them and you take the money in return. That's the exchange. That's fine. Now, look, if it's killing you, if it's toxic, if you're being, abused and manipulated, if it's terrible, if you can get out of it, if you can get a better job, do it, right? But just recognize your job doesn't have to be your whole life. Your life can be outside of that, right? But yeah, guess what? You have to have a job. Number 3, career. Here's another thing you do not have to have, right? A career is a job that you are passionate about and that you love, right? Now, a career is something where you're willing to make sacrifices, you're willing to work extra hours, you're willing to put your life on the line for this thing because you believe in the mission of what your career is. If you're in a career right now that you hate, that's terrible. Right? If you're in a job that you hate, that's okay. It doesn't matter. And if you're in a career that you can't stand, my suggestion is that you quit that career and just go get a job. Just go get a regular job to pay the bills so you can do other things. You should love your career. You should love your career or not have one. That's completely how I feel about careers. Not necessary, but if you have one, make sure you love it. Otherwise, there's no point. You're just grinding yourself out for nothing. Number 4, the holiest, most sacred, most amazing and mystical pursuit of all, vocation. A vocation is a calling. A vocation is a divine invitation. A vocation is the voice of the universe in your ear saying, I want you to do this thing. I want to use your talents and gifts to make this thing. I want you to participate in the story of creation in this way, right? We're living within creation. We are participants within creation. This is your piece of it. That's your vocation. It comes from the Latin, a calling, to be called, right? A vocation is the highest possible pursuit that you can do. Here's the amazing thing about having a vocation. Nobody can take it from you. Nobody can give it to you. And nobody can take it from you. Somebody can take your job away from you. Somebody can take your career away from you. Nobody can take your vocation away from you. Writing was my vocation for about 7 to 10 years before it became my job, right? Long before anybody was interested in what I was writing, long before anybody cared about me at all, writing was my sacred vocation. I wrote every day because it was a holy calling, because I needed to put something into the world, because I needed to put my handprint on the wall of my life and say that I was here. And I had a commitment to my vocation that said, I will do this for as long as I breathe, regardless of whether anything ever comes of it. And in the meantime, I will have a job. And what I will not have is a career. because I know that if I commit myself to a career, I will not have time for my vocation. So I'm just going to have a job. In fact, I'm going to have a bunch of jobs. I'm going to be a bartender. I'm going to be a waitress. I'm going to work in bookstores. I'm going to be an au pair. I'm going to be a cook. I'm going to be a babysitter. Like everything that you can do that doesn't overtake your life like a career, I'm just going to have menial jobs. And my vocation, my calling, my purpose is to be a writer, and it doesn't matter whatever comes of this. Now, here's the interesting thing. First, writing, the one thing that writing never was for me was a hobby, right? It was, oh, but I have other hobbies. Karaoke is a hobby. Gardening is a hobby. Writing poetry is a hobby. Making art is a hobby. I'm not terrific at any of that stuff. I just do it because it's fun. Cooking can be a hobby for me. But my vocation since I was a teenager was writing. So for a long time, it was a private vocation. And then it became a job because I got some jobs working on magazines doing journalism. And then it became a career, which is what it is for me now, because I put all my life into developing it and growing it. And as a career, I have to be aware of what my audience thinks of me. I have to be aware of what my relationships are with my publishers. I have to be aware of what I say on social media and how it benefits my sales of my books. I have to look at all of that stuff because it's my career. Here's the thing. My career as a writer might end someday. The publishing industry might end someday. Industries are being born and dying all the time. People might decide they don't care about my books anymore. And my career as a writer will end. My vocation will not. My vocation is a fire that I will keep going. So if my career as a writer ends, guess what I'm going to do next? I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get a job. And I'm going to keep writing in my bedroom like I did before anybody cared. And I'll keep doing that after people care. So what I'm saying to you is that if you've confused your job or your career with what it means to be creative and have an artist, and you think because you have a job or a career, you're not allowed to pursue your passion, your fascinations with color and texture, your fascinations with theater, you are wrong. You are wrong. And you're actually being, I'm going to call you out on this, a little bit lazy. A little bit lazy and a little lacking in self-accountability. You do not have to disappoint your family and throw away your job and your career in order to make art. And you have time. And you have other time that you can use. If you have a hobby or if you have a vocation, then you can live a creative life at the same time as living in the material world. In fact, that is the only way it has ever been done. So that's your assignment. Think about those words: hobby, job, career, vocation. Decide where you stand on all of them. And don't let go of this incredibly fierce self-accountability that it takes for you to recognize that you're in control of all of those things.
All right. Thank you for bearing with me. That is the only long form video that I'm gonna play for you, but I think that that point is a really important positioning for um, our conversation. Only you can kind of decide for yourself what these terminology, what your relationship is here. This is kind of the summary that I mentioned we would run through. Uh, Obviously, we're not talking about art necessarily, but you decide what your relationship with your profession is. Are we talking about a job, a career? What brought you to localization in the first place? Maybe there are parts of this that do feel like a vocation. Maybe there are parts of this that feel more like a hobby. I particularly love what she says at the end. You're in control of all of those things. And so my goal over the course of these sessions is to support you to feel empowered to be in your own driver's seat and to start making some decisions about what helps you move forward and what parts of yourself do you want to reinvent. So we called this reinventing your localization career, but I would invite you to really think about what is the blank here for you. Is this job, career, vocation, hobby? Is it maybe even something else? All right. So we're going to start with the little questions. Well, right. It's another big question. When you hear the question, how are you? It's a really tough interview question for many of us. Tell me about yourself. We're all at least, I think, a few decades old, and maybe we have hobbies alongside our professions. We have complex relationships with other people and places. We're seeing really rapid changes to our jobs and the type of jobs that we're needed for. So, how can we possibly describe ourselves in just a few sentences? How can we answer in a way that doesn't change every year? So I want to go through an exercise with you to support you to think about yourself in a different way. And that's going to be values. So for those of you who have already opened the worksheets, you'll already have that on the first page. If you haven't, please go to the course site, go to this link, or scan this QR code, and that will take you to the worksheets that we're going to be going through. I'll give you just a moment to do that while I start to introduce the values exercise. Um, we could think about if empathy is understanding other people and their feelings, then values would be understanding ourselves, what we hold dear, what makes us tick. And so our values help us to define our goals in life by determining what is valuable to you. Imagine yourself in a future that's defined by your value, and we're going to figure out how to get there. So you can think about what really matters to you in life and reflect on your life, family, friends, school, work, those times and experiences where you felt really good, and you get to define what good looks like. Um, and as you start to reflect, think about when were you fulfilled? Who were you with? What has contributed to your happiness, pride, or fulfillment? What do you spend your money on? So if you have the worksheet already, you see some of these questions listed there. Um, just for to make sure that we're in the same place, this is the worksheet that I am looking at, the first page. And there we have a list of values. I'm going to also pull it up here on the screen. Um, from the list here, I want you to circle. You can also do it in your own notebook. Um, these are all in English, but I want you to circle 10 words that make you think, yeah, that's me. You can also write words that aren't on the list, add others in your own language or languages. But the goal is I'm going to give you 3 minutes to find 10 words that describe your values. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can come back to this again later if you need. All right, I'll put 1 more minute on the timer. All right. Start to wrap up. If you haven't found 10 words, try to get as close to 10 as possible. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can come back to this exercise again later. Um, the next step is also the next step on our worksheet. We're going to list the top 10 values. So start to rank them now that you've circled or chosen 10 words. Try to put them in priority order. Which value feels most important, second most important? Just you can also reference, say, is that one more important than that one? I'm going to give you 2 more minutes to do that. Thank you, Laura. Um, I was on mute. Time is up. Hopefully you have come to a list of 10. If you didn't get to 10, that's okay. Hopefully you got at least the first 5 or so. I'm going to help you simplify this. We're just going to cross off 6 through 10, and now you have your top 5 values. And I want to encourage, take a moment in the chat if you want to share all 5 of those, if you identified them, 1 or 2. Let's share with another for a moment what has come up for you as your top value or values. Please share in the chat what is a value or some values that you recognize. Thomas shares curiosity. That's also one of mine, Thomas. We have independence, self-actualization, vitality, calmness, reliability. Thank you, Magdalena. Marie Fair says creativity. We have also creativity from Rodna in second place, also competence, growth, freedom. Laura has flexibility, also creativity, consistency, balance, growth, freedom, love, freedom again. I'm seeing a creativity again, independence. Really wonderful. Thank you for taking a moment to share. Also, you've already have the chat open. Why did we start with values when we're talking about identity? What are some thoughts about why are we talking about values here. Give you a moment to think about that question and share in the chat. And I'll start to give my answer as well. River says, we are more than our job titles. We are what we believe in or guide ourselves with. And depending on our cultural background, many of us learn to associate who we are with what we do. Could be I am a translator, a designer, an interpreter, a manager, a writer, a project manager, fill in the blank, so many different things. I had an Italian friend many years ago who pointed out to me that she would not call herself a designer. She said, I practice design, but that's not who I am. And perhaps it's different in your language or your region of the world. But I think as the world and working world continue to evolve, it's happening at an increasing speed. We start to recognize ourselves for what we care about. We could start to recognize ourselves for what we care about and not just what we create and consume. Um, you might also start to reflect on how these values, how they show up for the work that you do. Because values give us purpose, they make decisions easier, they give us confidence, they help us work with others. Um, it helps us to align our actions with who we are. When a decision comes up, we have the chance to say, does this align with my values? Um, when you take time to really think about what you value, you get to know yourself better. And this gives you confidence to act on your values later. And when you understand yourself, you can also help others understand your views when you have potentially a disagreement. Um, you don't have to change something overnight with these values in mind. If anything, it might help you come closer to your center and yourself. I would encourage you to keep this list nearby to reflect on it if you need to refine anything. And once you've agreed that these values are clear and that they do represent who you are in this phase of your life, you could start using them as guideposts for taking steps forward. We're going to move now into the second exercise. So we've started with thinking about how our values can influence our work. And again, we could have career, job, hobbies, vocation, whatever definition of work you want to associate with, whatever perspective you want to take. There are also aspects of you that are kind of somewhat inherent to who you are in your history. Some of you are going to be super energized by activities that would be super draining to other people. And identifying those activities can be extremely valuable as a kind of another guidepost, a North Star to guide the next steps of your personal and professional growth. So this exercise is going to support you to think about your career beyond your values, to understand your life and your work from the perspective of what brings you the most energy, makes you feel alive. And this could be called your zone of genius or your best self. So we're going to move on to the second worksheet. Uh, we've gone through the values worksheet and now we're on the zone of genius. You can think about your own perception of yourself, and you might do that. We're going to do a storytelling exercise in a minute, but you could also look for feedback from other people. Um, you notice when other people point something out, and you might have the thought, well, can't everyone do that? You might also proactively contact people um, and ask for their input and their perception. Uh, we're going to take a moment to explore your life story and look for moments when you loved what you were doing and you did it really well. Because those are kind of the convergence that meets us in the zone of genius. So the first exercise is the genius. This is a model to help you understand what activities energize you, to narrow down what you might be best suited to spend your time doing. There are four zones. And the one we're aiming for is genius. But not all of us can immediately jump into our genius from one day to the other. It helps to start with some awareness of where we currently are. We might be spread out a little bit. I want to talk through the zones. Let's start with the bottom of the rank. It kind of goes in a clockwise circle. So zone of incompetence. Where do you get consistently negative feedback about your work? Something you're not actually good at. What work do you do that just about everyone can do better? And what are you not good at? Why? So that's your incompetence. And then the next level up is confidence. What work do you do that others can do usually just as well, or maybe a little bit better? Work that you maybe do well, but it doesn't feel satisfying. If anything, it might be a little bit draining. That's your zone of competence. You can do it. And then we have excellence. You consistently get positive feedback about your work and life when you're in your zone of excellence. And you can do those things better than most other people. But there's a level above that, and that's the zone of genius. It's work that you love doing that doesn't even seem like work. It's aspects of your work that generate very positive results compared to the time spent. And you might even find yourself getting lost in this type of work that kind of you experience time as expansive. So either on the worksheet, you have some space below the questions that you could make some notes about some activities here, or you can do that on a separate page. Maybe take a moment to just jot down some quick thoughts about what comes up in those areas. This could be your own perception or feedback that you've received from other people. And while you're writing, if any questions come up, I don't think we actually have the Q&A configured here today. At least I'm not able to find it. So let's forget what I said at the beginning. Feel free to drop any questions that you might have about this in the chat. Again, these might be your own thoughts. You might also have observations and feedback from others who know you well. You might also, if this is starting to resonate, we're going to go through different exercises throughout this. You can decide which exercises, which worksheets you come back to and uh, set aside more time to think through it. I'm not seeing any questions at the moment, so I want to take you into the second exercise. So we called this kind of the zone of genius best self. And that is the second facet, the best self. Um, we're going to move the attention to storytelling. And this exercise gives you some space to think about your life and work. Um, Looking back, uh, you might think of achievements in your career, managing a large project, implementing a new system, translation management, adapting content maybe for a new market. I would really encourage you to even expand your thinking, big picture, work, home, leisure, hobbies, relationships, school, travel, could be any moment in life, and focus on what was meaningful to you personally, rather than what others might have found meaningful. And focus on a very specific moment, a week, a day, an hour, not necessarily, oh, I enjoyed that 6 month period of my life. Try to identify, let's say, minimum of three, could be up to five, or I would say a maximum of eight moments when you enjoyed what you were doing and you believe you did it really well. If you're a visual person, you could also visualize this as a timeline, marking some key events and transitions. So take a moment to think about some of your peak highlight moments in life. All right. I hope you've come up with at least three. You can continue writing, but I want to demonstrate what the second part of this exercise is. And for that, I'm going to need to ask for a volunteer. If someone feels brave and comfortable to come off mute and would be willing to share in front of the rest of us some of those moments that you really see as highlights. You can either drop into the chat, me, or use the reaction button to raise your hand and volunteer. Do we have a volunteer? It's okay if we don't. You will all have the chance to try this on your own. So what I'm going to invite you to do, if we're not going to have a volunteer, that's perfectly okay. You can do this on your own. And I would invite you to partner with someone who you really see as a strong listener. If you don't feel like you have a strong listener in your life, I think there's plenty of AI tools in this day and age that you could um, vocalize and share some kind of voice note or write out. And what we're looking for, and why it's really helpful to have a counterpart to reflect back to you, would be for you to share the story and tell, I really enjoyed this. This is what was going on, to describe those detailed moments that I was asking about. Um, and for them, what they're going to do, your partner, is to reflect back what highlights and themes stand out. Um, and that can be an indication for those things that make you light up, could be an indication of experiences that you might want to create more of in your life. Uh, so we've gone through the zone of genius, given you some ways of looking at that. This page needs to reload. We're now on the best self exercise, and you've had some chance to think about some of those highlight moments of your life. Um, this is a way of acknowledging kind of your best self. Um, the purpose of this exercise has two reasons. One, telling your story and reflecting on it helps you to recognize the moments that stand out. And for most people, it feels extremely validating to feel seen and heard and understood. And you can start to consider which of the experiences you might like to create more of in your life. And so, in that way, your past becomes sort of a present lens for what you might value in your future. And the second, which I think is even maybe more important, you need to be the author of your story. You're the narrator. Sometimes we start to describe our lives in ways that we are the victims. We've all experience problems in life, and we will continue to. But when a person tells their life story in such a way that they're always the victim of other people and circumstances in the world, those are people who are not doing well, and they're not going to do very well moving forward unless they can change that narrative and acknowledge how they can take responsibility. So, telling the story of you at your best moments is a way to take responsibility for the narrative. You can focus on describing what you kind of get to experience or do in life rather than emphasizing things that you have to do or had to do. And being the narrator helps us to shift from focusing on, we have a natural negativity bias in our mind. We're programmed to monitor for failure, to look for danger, and we can rewire that and to shift toward looking for learning opportunities, which is reflected in a positive, growth-oriented mindset. The last part of this worksheet touches on upper limits. Um, Sometimes we do things, we have thoughts that, again, this kind of bias for threats, this bias for failure, this bias for noticing problems is a way to protect us. And maybe we think we're keeping ourselves safe, we're keeping ourselves actually out of our zone of genius. Um, and here are four kind of ways that that might show up, these upper limits. It's also on your worksheet. One is that we might feel fundamentally flawed. To contextualize this to localization, you may feel that you aren't a real expert unless you have the next higher language mastery or you have advanced degrees in linguistics or something else, despite having maybe years of experience. You might hesitate to pitch high-paying clients or apply for a senior role because you somehow think you're inherently not enough. Uh, and that can lead to undercharging for services, avoiding visible or influential opportunities. It can lead to disowning, uh, difficulty owning accomplishments, and not taking credit. Um, the second one is about disloyalty and abandonment. So in this case, success would feel like we're betraying other people. Um, Raising rates with our clients might mean we're leaving them behind in that abandonment. Choosing to specialize we might associate with that with distancing ourselves from a tighter knit community that we're part of. The decision to step up and lead a team could feel like stepping away from peer relationships. So that can possibly lead to doing work that feels draining or it's not profitable. We resist growth when we're afraid of becoming someone else. We might also overwork to stay available to maintain that loyalty with our relationships. And I want to point out that none of these, this idea of flawed, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. All of these are human traits, human limits, but it helps to become aware of where we might be holding ourselves back so that we can take a step. The third one is more success, being a bigger burden. If you think that taking on more clients or leading projects, managing a team, uh, may it might feel like a fast track to burnout. But a translator who becomes a project manager may worry that success means more admin, more stress, and less of the work that they love. That can lead to self-sabotaging growth opportunities, delaying systems, not delegating. Uh, we might think that freedom and success are mutually exclusive. We cannot have both. And that, of course, is not the case. I know that some of you mentioned freedom as some of your values. You can have both freedom and success. And the last one is outshining. We might downplay success out of fear that colleagues or friends will feel bad or judge you. Some one of you might hesitate to post an accomplishment on LinkedIn or elsewhere to share an accomplishment, fearing it seems too boastful or it maybe creates distance from other people who are still struggling. And what this leads to is that we tend to stay invisible. we minimize our expertise when we're networking or pricing. And we might also avoid leadership or mentoring opportunities. So when there's chances for growth, we sometimes keep ourselves safe and we avoid those chances of growth. And this starts with some self-awareness, just noticing where you might be holding yourself back and might have the opportunity to embrace a challenge. We're coming to the top of our first hour, and that also means I want to offer you a short break. We've gone through a few tools already to understand who you are, your values, a summary of some lifetime highlights. I think that these can start to capture some of the experiences that you want more of. We're going to start defining what change might be possible. We're going to take about 5 minute break. You can refill your cup, stretch your legs. I think the break is, I'm not just offering this to squeeze a break in here. It's really important for our brains as well to take breaks. And while you're on the break, think about your earliest memories of comfort. All right, I'm going to leave this on the screen, put 5 minutes on the timer, and we will be back. I think for most of us, it's going to be around 3 minutes past the hour. We've got a few more minutes for the break. If any of you have questions that you want to chat while we're in the break, I'm very open to receive your questions. We have about 1 more minute before we're going to begin again. There's no rush, but a gentle invitation to come back in the direction of your screens. Again, if you have any questions that you want to share or discuss, you can drop those in the chat. Um, I would also love to hear from some of you. What do you think was one of your earliest memories of comfort? Take a moment to share in the chat what was an early memory of experiencing comfort in your life. What phase of your life, what chapter, what experience were you in? Where did you have a warm, cozy feeling of safety and security? If you're thinking about your childhood, I want you to think even earlier. For most of us, the first experience that we had in the comfort zone was in our mother's womb. And once we're born, we experience challenges in life and we feel uncomfortable. And what we do is we try to recreate the feeling of safety and security and we get comfortable. And then the next challenge comes. Um, so I have a few ways of visualizing this that I find really helpful. It can start to look like kind of a wave or a spiral. And we think we might be running in circles, not going anywhere. But when we shift perspectives, we realize that we're actually, through these challenges, experiencing growth. Usually, when we do something new for the first time, it's hard because new things are hard. And when they're not new anymore, they're also no longer hard. And that's a sign of growth. Um, you notice that there are ups and downs in life, and some people like to live at the extremes. I think dopamine regulation is a topic worth familiarizing yourself with, but I personally think balance is fairly important. Sometimes we get too focused on whether we're currently in a high or a low, and that there are some biases in our mind that they're meant to protect us, but they can actually hurt us. So that's what is kind of represented in this graph here. It can really help to zoom out and recognize that we're not just on a downward trend. One of those is projection bias. That refers to the tendency to overestimate how much someone's future self will share their current preferences or beliefs, thoughts, and values. So we have this sort of self-forecasting error and assume that what we're currently experiencing um, that will be kind of the same. Our future self will think of it the same way. And similarly, there's catastrophizing, hard word to say in English. And that's the tendency to assume that a current negative experience or emotion is going to last forever and lead to maybe the worst possible outcome. So this is a cognitive distortion, and we're exaggerating the permanence of negative states. So assuming that something will just evolve into a catastrophe, which is not necessarily the case, right? We come in these waves or phases. Um, and there's another reason that we can't constantly be moving up and to the right. If we're following this blue line, which is how we might imagine life to be, 100% of the time challenging ourselves, it's probably also introducing stress with no breaks. We just took a break. Uh, and if we're not taking any breaks, mental health experts call it chronic stress. that can lead to burnout. And it's important that we have breaks between these challenges so that we establish a foundation of security and safety to come back to between the hard things. We're going to talk a little bit more about those types of support systems in the second part tomorrow. But it's important that we emphasize that we do want to challenge ourselves, but we can't be challenged 100% of the time, 24/7, 365. I think that that's one of the challenges that we're facing today. So we need to challenge ourselves sometimes, and it's important that we also have self-determination. Um, we need to choose what are the hard things that we want to do. Why do we need to choose? You want to answer in the chat or at least think about that question. Why is it important that we're choosing? My answer would be that so Magdalena says progress makes me feel alive and proud of myself. Yeah, and it's much easier, I think, Magdalena, to recognize progress when it's something that you chose as opposed to someone else's goal or saying, hey, I need you to do this thing. The kind of self-selection there makes a difference. Again, we come back to that narrative of what we get to do versus what we have to do. It comes back to really being the narrator. If we don't choose the challenge that we want to face, life has a way of sometimes choosing them for us. Even if we want to get comfortable in our career, or again, fill in the blank for yourself there, and maybe we just want to have one job, one stable income until we retire. It's important to our human survival that we're evolving. Like all species, evolution is critical to our survival. Think you might have, did you lose me for a moment? Evolution is critical to our survival. Humans have been evolving for thousands of years, and you need to evolve too, which is what makes it important to find the challenges that you want to embrace and do it again and again and again. But a moment ago, I asked you this question about the comfort zone, and we talked about the womb being the first experience of the comfort zone. So even as adults, we're constantly trying to recreate that sense of comfort. And when moments of fear come up, we have these false flags in our mind that tend to overflag and overemphasize that things could be dangerous. In reality, I think there are very few tiger in the jungle moments in our modern world. And there are a lot of moments of growth and learning. So we step outside of our comfort zone. We might experience a little bit of fear, but that can also be an indication that we're in the area of learning and growth. And then we get more comfortable with those topics, activities, experiences, and the comfort zone expands, and we're suddenly comfortable again. And we might be at risk of not evolving. Um, and evolution is really important for our survival. So it's really important to ride these waves. Um, we challenge ourselves, we grow, and then we need to make the decision to challenge ourselves again. The author, Mark Manson, he asked the question, what pain do you want in your life? What are you willing to struggle for? He says, happiness requires struggle. And I would point out, if you really want to go into this fear exposure, um, exploration at least, you could do fear setting. It's an exercise from another author, kind of podcaster, blogger, Tim Ferriss, Ferriss. Um, think about what are the worst that could happen. And instead of setting goals, you discuss strategies for mitigating those fears. So that's something you can Google if you really want to explore your fears. We may also experience moments where we feel like we're on the verge of a breakdown. Uh, and it feels like we either have to choose the breakdown or the breakthrough. Maybe you've had a breakdown, and that doesn't mean that you're a broken human. Sometimes we need to go through the breakdown to have the breakthrough. Uh, and sometimes breakthroughs happen by accident, but most of the time they're a product of hard work. Part of choosing the challenges that we want to accept, that we're ready to commit responsibility to those hard new things in pursuit of the breakthrough. We're going to do another exercise about choosing challenges later in the course. But before that, we can't really challenge ourselves everywhere all at once. Again, that's chronic stress, and I want to support you to explore where in your life you might benefit from new challenges. So we're going to come to our third exercise, which is the wheel of life. This is another tool to evaluate where you might want to create change and maybe commit to a breakthrough. So if you don't already have those worksheets pulled up, here it is again. We've gone on from the upper limits. We've talked about comfort and change, and now we're on the wheel of life. So this is what the wheel of life looks like. You also have it on your worksheet. You can adapt this to your personal circumstances and whatever is important to you. You can also come back to it in a few months or a few years to reflect on where changes have happened and where you might need to rededicate focus or energy. But the basic idea is to choose some areas of life, and we put those in kind of the slices. And then we're going to self-assess if you feel fulfilled or satisfied in those areas. Um, so you have some suggestions. You don't have to choose from these eight. You also don't have to choose eight. It's just how we've broken up this circle so far. You could also narrow this to your career and just focus on categories like language skills, technology proficiency, cultural understanding, client relationships. Um, and then you have two options. You can either rank it from 0 at the middle to maximum 10, 100, whatever you call it on the outside. But how I've set it up and how I like to think of it is the yellow circle as defining having enough in that area. And the outer circle as having more than enough, or what's labeled here as abundance. And then the inner circle, everything inside the yellow is scarcity, not enough. So you can mark where you think you are at the moment, and then make notes also along the circles about what factors are contributing to your current state. Uh, no matter what rating you give, you can make notes about what abundance or scarcity could look like for you personally. So I have a sample here that we could reference. So for example, in the bottom right, kind of around 5 o'clock on the clock, we have the topic of hobbies. And this person said that it was feeling scarce because there was too much screen time and not enough reading. Um, with work, they said they're close to enough, a little bit scarcity, missing recognition and reward. So I'll give you just a moment to think of some areas, start with at least one, and think about how fulfilled, how close are you to enough? Is it scarcity? Is it abundance? And what would contribute to having scarcity or abundance? Hopefully, you've had time to at least fill out one of the sections. Um, the rest you could complete as a takeaway exercise to spend more time on. You're also welcome to share if you had some observations or questions about the exercise in the chat. Um, this is a tool that helps you to start to see where you might want to create changes. We don't need to be in abundance in every area, but scarcity could be a sign that we might want to shift something. But what's working for you and what's not? And you can kind of create the map of sources of scarcity and abundance in your life that may offer you the chance to choose. And again, there's that choice for you to do the hard work and to start to make changes. Do you have any questions or observations that you want to share? If not, we're going to move into our fourth and final exercise, which you don't have a worksheet for. This is going to be a visualization. Um, Before we close today, which we might close a little bit early, I want to move you in the direction of your future, which is where we're going to start to focus in part two. Um, but I'm going to guide you through this. I'm just going to put a blank slide here while we go through this exercise. And I want to um, invite you to find a comfortable position. Just settle in and notice if there's any distractions around you that you might need to eliminate. If you do have any distractions, uh, it's going to be best if you're not distracted at all for this. If you know that you're someone who struggles with visualization, then I would offer you the chance to just kind of listen and reflect and write. There are some people who experience what's called aphantasia, where visualizing and trying to see something is not possible. Um, the intention of this exercise is to understand who you're going to be in the future and to align as much as possible with your future vision. Um, the idea of a vision removes any current barriers that you might experience: time, money, resources, connections, relationships. All of that can be removed when we start to dream in the future. In the future, anything can be possible. 10 years ago, did you ever think that you would be here listening to me? Everything can change, and you have the ability to create it. I want to invite you to make sure you're in a quiet place. Again, it can sit comfortably without distractions. And once you find a comfortable seat, try to get your feet on the floor. Take a long spine. Roll your shoulders down and back so that your chest lifts up nice and tall. And find the balance where you experience your head so that your skull is balanced over your neck and your shoulders. Notice where you're sitting or standing, and place your hands on the top of your legs if that's comfortable. And I would encourage you, if you can find the comfort, to close your eyes. Notice your breath coming in and out. Notice the temperature where the air is reaching in your body, in your chest, in your belly. Take a big, deep inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Take two more like that. Let everything melt away until you feel absolutely still. And consider a beam of light coming from the top of your head, reaching and growing skyward as if it was a laser beam pointing into the clouds. It draws your awareness upward as if you're a ghost or a beam, or all of a sudden your awareness is floating above you. Follow that ray of light upward so that you can look down and see where you're sitting now. You become aware of yourself and your environment, and the view from overhead starts to lift upward so you see yourself not just in the room where you are, but beyond the rooftops and treetops, in the surrounding environment. Starting to see other buildings and streets. The view lifts up with increasing speed so that you can see the surrounding landscape, the city or town. You see nature, you see trees and mountains, maybe ocean. You keep going up until you reach the clouds, and you go past the clouds into the atmosphere and into space. And you're able to see the entirety of the globe in front of you. It begins to spin, slowly at first, and then more quickly. And it spins so fast that it spins ahead 10 years. And the same beam of light is now connected to you and your future self. And you begin to travel back down to Earth to visit that person in the year 2035. You head down through the clouds, taking notice of the new surrounding and the new natural environment you find yourself in. And you land right outside a new place. Notice where you are, whether at home or at work or somewhere else. What does the environment look like? Do you recognize the city that you're in? Where is it? What does it feel like? You walk into your home and you notice the walls. What do you notice about the walls? What's on them? Are there any distinctive smell? There's a morning beverage brewing, a big breakfast being made. Is there a wet dog running by your feet? You notice yourself, wow, they look great. You begin watching your morning routine. What do you notice about what you're doing? Are you rushing out the door, reading a newspaper, using some form of technology that you haven't seen yet? Are you doing it with anyone else in your home with you? Who are you with? Walk around, see who else is there. When things slow down, you notice that your future self is off to start contributing to the world. They're so good at this that people will actually pay them to do this work. People will actually pay you to contribute to the world in this way. How do you notice yourself contributing to the world? Who do you impact through your contribution? Where do you do it? Is it a studio? Is it at home? Is it at a school, playground, an office, a lab, a stage? Follow yourself there and notice what aspect this person loves most about it. You may actually be doing something that hasn't been invented yet, so it may not be understandable. Tune into how your contribution makes you feel. Focus on the feeling. And listen to other people's conversations as you pass them by. They can't see you, so eavesdrop a little. What do they say? What do people say about the work that you do? Notice how you maintain your happiness throughout the day. Notice how you maintain your health, your level of activity, how you expend your energy, what do you consume, what keeps you healthy. As your day begins to unwind, you follow yourself through the afternoon or evening. See, what are you doing after you've contributed for the day? When is the work done? Notice how you get around from point A to B, bike, car, driver, foot, train. Consider who is involved in the last few hours of your day. Do you invite someone over? Do you head out to an event with friends or colleagues? Do you volunteer? Where do you notice yourself doing these things? Notice that you're also saving for something. You're financially responsible and you're saving for something big and important. What could you be saving for? Get curious. The day begins to wind down even more. What do you do to end off your day? You sit by a fire, call someone, say goodnight. Do you make a last phone call or write another email? Kiss someone goodnight? Before you let yourself go to sleep, you walk up to yourself and they notice that you're there with them. And they're so delighted to see you, reaching out to offer you a hug and inviting you to sit down with them. They invite you to ask some questions about this life that they're so happy with. What do you want to know about yourself in 10 years? Thinking about the questions that bring curiosity for you. You ask them the question that you need the answer to today. And your future self starts to answer. And then you ask them, what do I need to know to get me to where you are? And then they remember that they have just packed a little gift for you. They hand you a box and offer you to open the box. You open the box from your future self and you see an object representing, what do I need to know now to get me to where you are? You take a moment to listen to what they share. Giving them a hug. Take a moment to explore and look around. And then you realize that the present is calling. And keeping your answer with you, you begin to feel that pull upward as you return back into the clouds. You leave your future self and life to be back here in the now. You travel back into your present life, following the whole process in reverse, seeing your country and state coming into view, the landscape around you, the city, town, the streets. You see the building or the place where you are at the moment, and suddenly you've arrived back in this space. Here, today, where you're seated right now. You'll notice small movement in your fingers and toes, wiggle your eyebrows, bringing life back to your body by taking a deep breath in and let it out when you open your eyes with a smile. Reach for your pen and paper and take a few minutes to recall what you saw for yourself in the future. Write down as many details as you can about your life, your work, your home. Recall everything that was important to you, and especially highlight or make note of any answers that you received from your future self. Whatever they told you for a reason. Whatever they gave you for a reason. I'll give you a moment to reflect on that. Thank you. All right. Can continue making notes. We're going to start wrapping up our first part. Today we have focused on your identity and the need for change. Who are you? What can you gain from change? And lastly, we just focused on how can you imagine yourself evolving. In the second part, we're going to focus on what can support you to transition, what you can and can't control, and what challenges do you want to commit to. If you have any thoughts or questions to add in the chat about today, you're welcome to do that. But I want to do a little collective takeaway exercise. And again, we'll have this Menti that you can scan and share your thoughts. My question for you is, what is or are your takeaways from our conversation that we've had so far? You can scan this or go to menti.com and put in the code at the top of the screen. What are your takeaways? Values can guide us through our whole life. Absolutely. Something no one can ever take away from you. Serenity, beautiful word and reflection about myself. An affirmation that the changes I'm going to start doing are going to propel me forward. I see a human in our audience, no need for self-limiting beliefs and self-sabotage. Time to define and tackle the challenge. If you feel self-limiting and self-sabotage, it is very much a sign that you're human, as difficult as it can be. Change is necessary, absolutely. If we are not changing, if we are not evolving, our survival is actually at risk. Yes, and we should be constantly learning and growing. When we're not, that's when we get too comfortable. All right, I'm seeing less responses come in now, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. We do have one more. Would love to experience my genius side even more. I would love that for you too. Take time to explore it. We've covered a lot of exercises today. Well, at least 3, 4 really exercises that can have a lot of depth to them. And so I want to invite you to set aside whatever time. Like I said at the beginning, this is going to be something that you're going to get out as much as you put in. And so the more time that you want to spend on the exercises on your own, you potentially have more. And I would encourage you, when you think you've found an insight, to keep going. I like to call that "and what else?" Like go further once you've recognized your genius to take it further. Would love to collect some feedback from you, especially if you're watching this live, even if you're not. This will support me. There's still a chance to evolve. Tomorrow's the second part for you. So you can either go to this website or again, scan this QR code. It's just 3 quick questions to fill out. Just share your thoughts about the first part. That will support us to adapt the course to support you and what you need. Um, I need to switch. Yes, thank you. I'm stuck on this. Thank you for letting me know. Why would it do this in the middle of the presentation? All right, we're back. Thank you for that. Here's where you can give feedback. So we were on the Menti checking out and then coming to feedback. Here's the link where you can give feedback, or you can scan that QR code. Again, it's just 3 simple questions. I'll leave that up for a moment. We're wrapping up a little bit early with part 1, but I'm happy to stay online for those of you who are live and answer any questions or hear any thoughts live. If you want to discuss anything with me, you're also welcome to come off mute. And if you're not comfortable doing that on the recorded version, we'll pause the recording in a moment as well. So here's the link. And I'll take any questions.